this little presentation is divided up into a couple parts, but I'm starting with, as Gamal mentioned, my latest acquisition, which is this 9 3/8 inch terracotta medallion portrait of one of my favorite artists, Honoré Daumier. This was done by an artist by the name of Adolphe Victor Geoffroy-Dechaume, who made very, very few medals, and actually more likely a couple of medallions, another one of which I'll show you. But he was a rather interesting artist, not in the sense of being a great artist among the other 19th century French artists, not certainly as great as Daumier, who was actually one of his closest friends, but he was very important in another way. And that is that when he was a young boy, he attended the École des Beaux-Arts, and he studied with someone whom you do know, I think, David d'Angers, who was a great medalist and who really revived the cast bronze medal in France. But he, after studying design and actually spending many years doing designs for precious objects, jewelry, things of that sort, he then went on to become very interested in sculpture. And he never really became a great sculptor, but his importance lay in the fact that by the mid-19th century, there was a strong effort to restore all of the monuments that had been destroyed by the French Revolution. And that was under the control of several, again, very well-known architects. Maybe the best known was Viollet-le-Duc. And he was in charge of the sculpture of churches such as Notre Dame and Saint-Chapelle and Chartres and Amiens. I mean, most of the great, great churches in France, the Gothic churches in France. And he would design, and in some cases, either carve or have cast. And on the left is a portrait of him in his studio with various meaningful objects around him. And on the right is the position that he held at the end of his life, which was the director of the Musée Monuments Français, which is the great museum in the Trocadero in Paris of casts. Let me go on to the next one. Well, I just wanted to show this because this is David d'Angers, just to show a good example of one of his medallions, which were really the inspiration for much later work. And this is a medal of Corot, the great painter Corot, who was also a very close friend of Geoffroy-Dechaume, and also of Daumier. Daumier was friendly with all of these artists. But this is another medallion of the very few that Geoffroy-Dechaume created. He did also some monuments, either statues or funerary monuments as independent sculpture, not just sort of restoring works of art. But this is really what he did usually. And this is a replacement, I guess you'd have to say, of the Trumeau figure of Christ's blessing in the Last Judgment portal of the west facade of Notre Dame in Paris. And he also did these, and this is really related to a rather tragic and very recent story. These are the 12 apostles and 4 evangelists in copper, because he worked in different materials, that were installed, as you can see them here, installed in the 4 directions of the compass at the base of, guess what? The spire of Notre Dame. And you all know what happened to that. Well, 2 days before that fire, all of these statues, for restoration purposes or to get them out of the way so that the spire could be restored, they were all taken down. And so every one of them was saved. Anyway, just as a sort of aside, and also to show other terracotta medallions in my collection very quickly. This is perhaps one of the most famous artists of this type of material and of this size of medallion, Giovanni Battista Nini, an Italian who worked in France. And on the left is a portrait of his patron. He set up a workshop for Nini at his chateau. And on the right is a rather attractive noblewoman. Just to give an example of, because terracotta would be used like plaster, either as a mold or as a finished product. And Nini was making these as finished medallions to sell, not really in any other material. And he would probably have a terracotta mold, and then he would make these medallions. And I'm going to very quickly. Once again, David d'Angers, who was so key to this process. This is a model on the left in plaster and on the right in wax. And this is really, when you talk about metals being originals or not originals or aftercasts or whatever else, these are really the only originals because they are from the hand of the artist. They are what precedes making a mold and then a cast. And you get a cast from the wax. And particularly with David d'Angers, who made a series of 500 medals of prominent people of his day in different foundries. And the quality of these casts can vary tremendously. And actually, if you're going to find one, you should, if it exists, be able to compare it with the wax model. But in that case, I mean, usually it doesn't. Or you can have something like this from the mid-19th century of the famous poet Chateaubriand, also giving his name to a type of steak, I think, a dish of steak. And this, again, is a finished product, which would be sold as is, and is based actually on a painting, a portrait of Chateaubriand. Or this late 19th century, very large terracotta medallion. I don't know, maybe we should be called the Medallion and Medallic Collectors of America. But this is an extremely fine terracotta model. I don't know of any. So back to Daumier. And I think among the great artists of the 19th century, the French artists of the 19th century, Daumier looms very large. And he was very versatile, worked in lithographs, 4,000 of which he produced of all different subjects, painting and sculpture. And he had a sense of, and he also actually designed a medal. But he was also quite critical of the French government, particularly the government of Louis Philippe. And as you can see, if this medal was ever produced, I don't think King Louis would have been very happy because he is satirizing him here and actually caricaturing him. But he covered all aspects of human life and did so in a kind of a wry, sensitive, rather sympathetic way. But all levels of society, some of which he criticized, some of which he celebrated, and some of which he just appreciated in this way, such as this print, which is one of my favorites, which says, "When one has a father who is a joker." And I'll just very quickly run through some of his things. Or this sort of thing where you say, "A man without a home is like a bird without a nest." Or one that I always send to new parents, which is, here's the moment just past midnight where peace and calm truly reign in happy households. Better late than never. I mean, this is the kind of thing that he excelled in, and he was so sympathetic and sensitive. And his paintings too, either direct reportage, such as this third-class carriage, or here a collector looking through a portfolio of prints. But he was also very critical of the government, and he produced early in his career this very famous print of, which is called Le Ventre Législatif, which is the belly of Congress. And I think we can all feel a bit sympathetic toward this, because he caricatures all of these men. But not only did he do this, and here's the final slide, he also turned them into sculpture. And they are among the most amusing and most effective caricatures I think ever produced. So there you have it. Thank you.